the right wing with their thugs. We've got the end of coronavirus in the eyes of the wealthy, I believe. They're desperate to cut down that distance from 2 to 1 meters, aren't they? All that pressure there. But what I'm also seeing is that some business people are putting health before wealth on purpose, and very successful ones. So quite challenging times at the moment, I think, out there, as well as health phobias. A lot of people are suffering from anxiety and panic attacks, which is where the Thrive with Gary comes in. And I'm not surprised, really, because they're bombarded every day by what I call the negativity of the media. You just can't escape it, can you? You just can't escape it.
The Black Lives Matters has been a big topic in our house. I've got an 11-year-old who spends a fair amount of time on social media, and and her dad says all lives matter, and she's like, that's not the point, Dad. And it's just a question of how it is presented. And then, of course, you see the news this morning, and the guy who was defecating the policeman's memorial is up in court. And then you've got Dad saying, wait, what about them that dragged that statue down? When did they go to court? What happened to them? So there's no balance, is there, in
there isn't
what you're being told.
True, and the media can actually capture things out of perspective to create that news. So, like the guy relieving himself wasn't actually over the memorial; it was next to it.
Yeah.
But having said that, obviously, it was very disrespectful on many points. Number one, urinating in public is not allowed.
Done it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, I think it would have been best trying to find somewhere else.
I think the best picture I've seen from the weekend sort of is the black guy that's carried the white guy over his shoulder because he's hurt. That was the most powerful image that I'd seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how it came about, but just capturing that was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can really understand that the Black Lives Matter now, because it is an issue in definitely in the States, there's no doubt about it, but also with the people I speak with over here, my friends who are black, or those who have come from a mixed family, that they have been under an awful lot of pressure most of their lives regarding racism. Although I can remember when I left school, for 2 solid years, I was actually racially abused every day by the staff that I worked with, because 80% were from the Asian community in Leicester, and they didn't want a white boy as their apprentice, and they made it perfectly clear to me they didn't want that. And yet, when I reflected back, I didn't realise they were being racist towards me. I just thought they didn't like me. My family, go back in the roots, are Irish, so there's a lot of racism there. And again, it's having to deal with those prejudices. I truly believe this will never, ever end, ever, in any shape or form on God's green earth. This will never, ever end, this thing called racism and prejudice. But what we can do, whilst we're in this environment, is do our very best to manage it, to be fair and equitable to the people around us. And if the majority of people do that, I believe that there's a good chance that change will begin to happen. It happens rather slowly, but it will never, ever, ever end. And I think it's a bit like people thinking we're going to go back to normal after COVID-19. There is no normal, is there?
Definitely not. I mean, my message to my 11-year-old is that, charity begins at home. So actually how we can solve this racism, prejudice, it's all about getting along with our fellow people, no matter, because I've said we're all one race. It's in our hands how we deal with the people that we're in touch with. Yeah. That's what matters. We can't necessarily control what people are doing on the street. We can have an opinion about it, but the only thing we can do is in our own actions.
Absolutely. I think it's very healthy to have an opinion as well, to not be stifled or worried or concerned about what others might think, because to have an opinion means that sometimes things might be uncomfortable. Having to have uncomfortable conversations with people is one way that we can deal with the issues that we have, just to either appease or ignore it, or to try and think it's never happened, will never change anything. Obviously, that's my opinion. I can always remember during my therapy days, and even with coaching, when someone gave me their belief or their opinion, I would always agree with them, always, regardless, because it was their opinion. And by agreeing with them, well, it's very difficult for them to then begin to argue about things, because you've said, yeah, you're right. No matter what anyone said to me, you're right. So if I was if I was interviewing someone on the right wing, you know, the thugs that came in to defend, I say, you're absolutely right in what you're doing. Doesn't mean I agree. It just
Yeah.
means I'm agreeing with them, with the Black Lives Matters. Again, I'd say you're absolutely right. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that they're doing, but by agreeing, you can begin to work together. As soon as you oppose, it's a bit like two north magnets, isn't it? As soon as you oppose people, that's it.
Yeah.
There is one thing, though, Wendy, that I have noticed. It is very, very difficult to have a debate with an activist.
Why is that, Gary?
Their thinking is so black and white, it is so fixed, that there is only one viewpoint, and that is their viewpoint. They can be rather narcissistic in their behavior, so it's all about themselves. So that's activists on both sides of the argument of the coin. And so they're the two extremes that can be the most difficult to work with. And I find that often happens in business. So there are certain types of customers that are right at the very extremes, and we often have to make the decision, I don't think I'm right for them. Because you just know they're not going to blend, they're not going to change, they're not going to flex. There's only one way. And if there's only one way, there's no negotiation, is there?
No. And I suppose that sort of links in quite nicely to what I was going to say just before you said that, was that a lot of the time it's not just about opinions. It's kind of like an understanding, isn't it? You've got to, you can all listen to what's going on.
Absolutely.
Do you understand what's going on? So by asking lots more questions, you can, and making sure that you've got, that you're asking the range of people, the demographic is different. There's no point going down the pub, do you remember those days, and asking all your white mates what they think about it. You know, I'm much more inclined to ask my black mates what they think about it, because that's where it's happening and affecting them, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I was sort of reading up as well this morning, you know, you were saying about social anxiety. Children are suffering this now, you know, that they can meet up in the garden, or they can go to the park and see their friends.
Yep.
My daughter can do about an hour before she's texting to say, Mum, can you ring me to say come home? Like it's me calling her home, because she doesn't know how to say, I can't deal with this anymore and I need to leave.
Yeah.
In business, I do believe that we're all different now too. We've all been affected, you know, on an emotional level.
Yes.
So going back into teams, you know, those people that we've known for however long we've worked together, and they're all subtly changed. They're not going to be the same people. And even if it is only subtle, some may have had some really big shifts, and from an unsurprising source. You know, the person you least expect to have changed will have. So I think there's an awful lot of support going to be needed to just get back into that environment.
True. I'm often reminded it's linked to their locus of control. So when people are out of control, then they will display all sorts of symptoms, often anxiety, panic attacks, depression, that feeling of being lost and bewildered. The people that are very resilient, that have the ability to feel in control, and the word I love is regardless of what's happening, they're the ones that will pull through. They're the ones that will actually make a difference, either if they're the business owner, people working in a business, family members. It is the resilience. I don't know if I told you the story, but I always remember we did research years ago on cancer survivors, patients in young people. And what they noticed is that the the youngsters that survived the most were the ones that were the least compliant with the system. So if they had an appointment, for example, let's say it was Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and they also had a football match or a netball match, then that came first in their mind. And often they would be the most awkward, irritating patients for the professionals to deal with, because they just wouldn't comply at all. But that lack of compliance also meant that they were high in their resilience. So their recovery rates were far better than the family members and the children that complied with the professionals, yes sir, no sir, and behaved themselves. They died where the others lived. And I think that one of the things that could help people is to understand that internal state, that if they could just build that resilience and feel good about themselves, because life's changed anyway.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
changed completely. And it's going to continually change. Life's always been changing, really. It's just that what's happened, we've gone on hyper speed, haven't we? You know, what might have taken, say, 10 years, took 2 months. Yeah. You know, with the drop in production in the country, never alone individual businesses, you know, the loss of jobs, it's happened in a massive way. So what we can do as professionals maybe is begin just to do those small things to encourage people to feel good about themselves, and also to be in charge of themselves. You see, the more people rely on someone else to change what's going on, the worse they'll get.
A great example on the news this morning was an 11-year-old girl, that she's the British top skateboarder.
Right, yeah.
Had a major crash, didn't she, in training. If it was the Olympics going ahead this year, she'd be out of the competition. And
right.
She released a video. She's a happy, smiley kid, and I kind of get it that if you are going back to the cancer story, if you've got cancer and that is your priority and it takes over your life, I can imagine that's a pretty sad place to be. So yes. I want to go netball, I'm going to want to go football, I'm going to want to go to the pitches with my mates before I have to think about going to the hospital.
Correct.
This guy, she's done the most brilliant thing, I think, and she's released the footage of her crashing.
Right.
And it's scary. The doctor said, if you hadn't have had your helmet on, you'd be dead. And she turned around and released it. And she said, I want people to not see me as a superstar, because they think I'm a superstar because I'm at the top of my game. I want them to see that I fall. And sometimes I fall big time. And that's okay. That's what you need to do to be the best. And I thought, what an amazing girl at 11. To get
absolutely
like that.
Yeah, great coaching. And also she's exactly right that it's not about needing to fall to be the best. It's needing to understand that when you do fall, it's what you do about it, and when you get back up again and decide to carry on and not give up and maybe change your approach. I think that's for me. I see that a lot. I did a video the other day for a group of youngsters based a little bit on my life story. I can remember in the room I had my black belt and I had my first judo jacket, which is only about that big because I was very tiny. But I remember it took years and years and years for me to get to that black belt standard. And I remember the word failing an awful lot, but never failure. Because I believe that you'd be failing towards success. And it's the guy who runs the Tesla. Oh, what's his name now?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, that's the one. He has something about that in his philosophy, that he wants his team to be failing, because he knows that the more that they do, the more they're failing, they will hit on success. I just think that back at schools and at colleges, I'd like to think that they might go through that. I often think my own experience, it's not. It's either you succeed or you fail, not that you're failing. And it's encouraging people to fail, definitely, and that there's no shame in it. And you're right, it's about what do they do when they have, do they give up or do they get back up again and do it again, do it again?
And that's the same, you know, you've just reminded me of something I was thinking about over the weekend is kind of, you know, because somebody said to me, what do you do, Wendy? And it was like, well, I help people have conversations. I want to open up conversations. And it took me back to what my daughter then had asked me, what do you do? don't understand it. What did you want to do when you were at school then, Mom? And it was, I wanted to be a teacher. So that's kind of how I explain it now. I'm a teacher. I'm helping you to have those conversations. But of course, there would be no way on earth that I would have said to her, I wanted to be a fantastic cold calling person. You know, I wanted to be in sales. You know, I don't know anybody that would say that, you know, that I'm going to go and be the best sales performer there is. That's not a job. You're going to be a what? You're going to be a policeman, a fire engine, drive a fire engine, or drive a train, or you're going to be a receptionist, or, you know. So it just got me to thinking that actually, you know, I'm maybe approaching my 50th year next year. I am sort of at the top of my game at what I do, and I love it, but it's not what I set out to do, and it's certainly not what I'm finished doing. It's just, I'm just making the best of what I have available to me and the opportunities that are available to me. And that's what our kids need to hear.
It's so true, so true. I remember someone saying to me, after the first sales job that I had, he said, oh, look around, Gary. I said, why is that? He said, not one of the people in this room left school saying, I want to be a salesman or saleswoman. He said, you fall into it, don't you? He said, that guy over there used to be a chef. She used to work in an office as a receptionist. He used to run his own business. And it's so true. It is so true. And yet, why not? Why can't we introduce that or encourage the education system to look at sales, the sales profession, and say, well, why wouldn't any youngster want to be in sales?
I saw an advert on LinkedIn this morning, and they were looking for young interns.
Yes.
To make cold sales calls. So it was an entry-level job, and they were basically hanging their hat on, you know, 18-year-olds with no experience, no training, no nothing to grow their business. And you just think, now 30 odd years ago, I would have not batted an eyelid at that advert, and I'd have applied and got the job.
Yes.
Like I did. But it's kind of like, really? You know, you need training in this. People need help to know how to do this. And you're not.
That's right. But isn't that the same with people that set up their own business? That when they do, it's because they want to be really great at whatever their business is. So if they're a photographer, it's taking pictures. You know, if they're a florist, it's selling flowers. And yet they didn't realize that when they set up, they'd have to be a marketer, saleswoman, a promoter, PR, you name it, they've got to do it.
Banker.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But the two key areas definitely that make a massive difference in any business, I don't care what anyone says, that's marketing and sales. Yeah, marketing means letting people know that you exist, and sales is saying, do you want to buy me? Yeah, everything else just falls in. And yet those two key areas, for whatever reason, you're right. I've often seen that, like interns. I think what they're looking for people on the cheap as well. And I see that a lot in different professionals when they want to be using things that are free to grow their business, and yet they want to be charging premium rate. It's just dichotomy. There's no marry up there. There's no investment.
No, but then that's the same as those that are offering something for free, and you think, "Oh, what's the catch?"
Yeah, what's in it?
They're going to try and sell me something anyway, aren't they? You know,
Yeah.
I've always steered well clear of that. I've been asked to put on challenges. I've been asked and approached. Can you put on, you know, can you send me tips in a newsletter and things? No, just ask me what you want to know and I'll help you.
The best way, yeah, be straight, please.
I don't want you to give me your email address so that I can sell to you. That's, you know.
No. Although, I don't know if I told you, and I'll give him a shout out. I remember Jamie Smart, and I think it was, who was it now? It was one of his good friends told me that Jamie used to do calls that went like this. Oh, hello, Wendy. This is Jamie from Salad Training. This is a sales call. Just wanted to check if you've got 3 or 4 minutes. So by actually telling you it's a sales call, I've taken all the pain away, haven't I?
Yeah, you just want to sort of have a good response to that. Like, well, what do you want then? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a sales call. I want to sell you something. That's right.
And so somebody was asking last week that they'd sent an invitation out to an event, and it was to peers in a particular industry. It was very, very specific, and but then were suddenly doubting that, was it spammy? And it was just like, no, it had purpose. If you have a purpose, what's spammy about it? You know, how else are you going to get under their nose for them to read it unless you ring them? You know, so perhaps you could have rung them and said, I'll send you an email to confirm it. That would have been a really nice way of doing it. But certainly, you know, there's so much noise everywhere. How do you stand out? You know, you've got to be able to use the tools that you've got. And
I think so, yeah.
And it's how can you be effective and use them all so that they feel human?
Yeah, well, look, I'll give a shout out to the solicitors that sent this through to me, and it's Wilson the Bear, from Wilson Brown.
Wilson.
Yeah, so how does Kevin Rogers, one of the main guys at Wilson Brown, decide that as a group of solicitors, how can they stand out from the rest? Well, number one is branding. Number two is doing things that most people won't do, which is sending fluffy bears out to people. Now, I'm remembering them, he's got his branding right, but also they're good at what they do. They're good at what they do. Is he going to worry that someone might say, oh, you're not being serious because you're using a bear? Yes, he might get that bad. He won't worry about it. He'll just measure it like all good marketers do. You're right. Is it spammy? Well, it's spammy if it's got nothing to do with you or your business, is it? That's spamming. It's a bit like sending direct mail out. I truly believe in doing 2 and 3 steps to test out what's happening. You know, whether it's sending out a postcard. You've got those great brochures that you had done, didn't you? Yeah. You know,
going on the website.
Yeah. But put a little note on the brochures when they go out. Thought this might interest you. Then you can call them up. You know, if someone's received something in the post, I think it does 2 things. For the caller, it makes us feel a bit better. I've got a reason why I'm calling you.
Yeah.
For you, you might receive it, but not remember it. But at least somewhere in your mind, oh, yeah, I'm sure Gary sent me something. If I sent out teddy bears, I think you'd remember. Yeah, there's definitely, you know, there's a clue in what we send out.
What's memorable about it, isn't it? So if if you get one of these in a bright pink envelope,
yes,
you're going to remember. You're going to
Absolutely.
remember the bright pink envelope and the handwritten note. Yeah. If then, you know, if it's useful or not. But the other purpose it has is on the side here, I put all my stuff that's safe. I put it in a safe place. And it might not be the right time now.
Correct.
I've kept that because I like the touch.
Yes.
And I like the fact that when they've rung, gone, have you got it? Yeah. Any good for you? Yeah. Oh, okay. No. When's it going to be any good for you? Brilliant. And I'm going to come back to you then when it's going to be right for you. That's playing into how business should be done, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a positive intent there, isn't there? With intention, then you get attention, I believe. So without it, no attention at all. None whatsoever. You just noise like everyone else. But if there's a positive intent and you truly want to help someone and you've got something there that could make a difference, I've already tested that one out. I know I've told you some of my tests I've done, but I truly believe, I suppose it's just from reactions, that, if you follow through on that, you've got a better chance of them wanting to speak with you than not.
I've used one of your sayings lots since you told it me a couple of months ago. And that's,
which one's that?
If you don't ask, it's always going to be no.
Correct. Yeah.
And that stuck, and I've used that, and I've said, as my mate Gary says. So every time
don't ask, the answer's always no, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so what have you got to lose? Yes, no, maybe, not yet. You know, that's it. Yeah.
Nothing really. Nothing. In fact, you'll gain an awful lot. You gain a lot. You gain like that emotional impact of what it's like when someone says no. Okay, then you also gain the emotional impact when they say yes. You think, oh, that's good. And then you also gain the emotional impact when they say maybe.
Yeah.
So either way, you actually gain. You never
You know where
lose
you
any.
stand, don't you? If you know where you
Yeah,
stand, you still
yeah,
feel like you're in control of something, and then you
that's
can still measure it to see
right.
whether
Yeah.
it.
And the time might not be right now, Wendy. You know that, don't you? The time might not be right now for, say, you and I to work together. But at least if I like plant the seeds when I'm gardening, if I plant the seeds and I nurture them and I water them, then some will grow and blossom. And that's the same with customers and clients. Exactly. It's the same when someone sells something to me. If they've taken the time without trying to pressurize me, and I think, well, that's good, and they've thought about me and my business, they've got a far better chance of me buying than not.
Yeah, I think too much is put on the close. You've got to close the business.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Do not. It's about inviting someone on board. I believe in doing that often. You know, I might say to someone, "Look, by the time we finish this, we can both decide whether it's right for you." I might decide. I might ask you to come on board as a client, but that's about as far as I go. Is that okay? And just by doing that, it's a pre-close technically, but it's so gentle that if we get to the point where it's not right, well, neither of us are going to be upset by it, are we?
Exactly. Yeah.
Invite on board, another phrase. I
Yes.
look forward to inviting you on board as a client, Wendy.
I feel like these
Oh,
are our sessions.
they
I feel
are, aren't
so
they?
much better after our chats, honestly. That we ought to start a chat show, I think.
I do believe that we can do that. We've had a couple of people say that. Just need to get a couple of guests along, do some live stuff as well. I'm sure we can do it. I'm sure we can have some fun with that. And if nothing else, no one else is doing it, are they?
No, not,
No.
not that I've seen.
Well, until they watch this recording and then they'll try and beat us to it. But we've still nailed it. It's the WAG show.
It's the Wendy and Gary show. Well, see, we need a jingle now.
We do, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
have to call out to all of our musical connections, and see if we can
Yeah,
get a
yeah,
jingle.
yeah. So for anyone listening to myself and Wendy, if you've got an idea or a jingle or something you think is really cool, just drop us a line. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Wow, well, I think we've covered quite a bit